Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Christy Hall, JWLF board member and the manager of branding, communication, and events at the Energy Authority. Please don't forget to show us what's inspiring you today by using the hashtag JWLF2023. Also, please follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and to learn more about our organization, check out jwlf.org. We now continue our forum with our distinguished panelists who are joining us to discuss driving connections through culture. A quick reminder, if you haven't already activated the poll on your phone, text JWLF360 to 22333, and you'll be able to add your voice to this conversation. You just need to enter the code once on your phone, and the poll is activated for the remainder of the event. And here's our next poll question. In 1 or 2 words, describe what corporate culture means to you. While you're entering your 1 or 2 words, I'd like to bring Amanda Slavin back to the stage to serve as our panel moderator, and I'll introduce our panelists. Ted Phillips is the Chief Financial Officer at JEA. He has served in the not-for-profit utility sector for more than 30 years. He's an active member in his community, currently serving on the Salvation Army Advisory Council, and has served on the boards of the United Way and the Schools Foundation in Huntsville, Alabama, and was a long-term leader in the Boy Scouts of America. Angie Williams is Vice President and Chief Accounting Officer for the CSX Corporation. She is responsible for overseeing all of the company's corporate accounting functions. An advocate and influencer of emerging talent, Angela prioritizes employee development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. At CSX, she started a coffee series to seek employee input from all levels of the organization, and she serves as executive sponsor of CSX's Asian Professionals for Excellence Business Resource Group. In the community, Angela has served on a wide range of professional panels, using her voice to advocate for women and people of color. Wyman Winbush is the president and partner of WRW International, a company specializing in leadership training, high-performance coaching, and DEI enablement. Wyman is a former 31-year sales leader and instructor with IBM and a 30-year retired naval officer. As a community steward, Wyman served as a trustee at Florida Community College at Jacksonville, a director at JEA, and as an elder in his church. As a 25-plus year member of the National Speakers Association, he has shared his professional speaking abilities with recognized companies across the nation. Kawanza Humphrey serves as the Chief Human Resources Officer at ViStar Credit Union. In her role, she is responsible for leading the credit union's human resources efforts. She has helped lead the growth of over 10 employee resource groups. These efforts display Kawanza's passion for creating positive change in the work environment and in the community. In addition to her role at ViStar, Kawanza is passionate about volunteerism and economic development. She has been recognized as a woman of influence, a 40 under 40 recipient, and a Black achiever in industry. Please welcome our panelists.
I'm having deja vu. I feel like I was just here. So I would love for each panelist to start. We all just did our catalyst statements. So each panelist is actually going to read, they did not know this until they got here, their panelist statements that we've printed out. So why don't we start with you, Wyman?
Start with me. As a multidisciplined problem solver, I stand for improving the human condition, and I believe that we are all here to serve each other.
Beautiful. Yes, you can clap after each person now. Angie.
As a parent to 2 teenage boys, wife, dog lover, and corporate chief accountant, I stand for excellence, passion, respect, relationships, and equality, and I believe everyone should work hard, have a positive impact on others and their environment. The sky is your limit.
Beautiful. Yep, we're going to clap for each one. Okay. All right. Kawanza.
Good morning, everyone. As a mom, I stand for our children, and I believe our children deserve to be their authentic self, have fun, and be safe.
Yes.
I'm the old man up here. I got to wear my glasses to get it right. As an introverted, animal-loving CFO, I stand for building relationships, mentoring young people, enjoying what life has to offer. I believe we are put on this earth to use our skills and talents to make a positive difference in other people's lives.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that, because we were talking prior, and if I had just said, tell us about yourself, we would have heard something really different. So thank you all so much. Okay, let's begin. So what's the most important lesson you've learned in the last year? I actually would like for each of you, I'm gonna go this way now, but I would like for each of you to answer the question, what's the most important lesson you've learned in the last year? We're gonna start with you, introverted dog lover CFO.
Yeah. So mine's really a personal thing. My 93-year-old father-in-law spent the last year of his life living with us, right? And he passed away in February. And he had a wonderful life. For me, it really was a heartwarming experience to see my wife get to spend that time with her father as you know, he faced that inevitable place we all end up. So for me, it made the thought of dying less scary, right? And so, you know, if I learned one thing in the last year, that was it.
That's a big lesson. And I'm sure it's, I just heard a friend of mine who worked kind of telling the stories of those who were close to death, that death is really here for the ones who are still alive, the lessons that we learned. So I'm sure it changed your perspective of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Enjoy the moment, right?
Beautiful, beautiful.
We're not promised tomorrow.
Yes. Kawanza.
Yes. I learned to slow down and be intentional in every moment. So I have an 8-year-old son, and we went on vacation, and don't judge me because we're going someplace here. So we went to Vegas.
Yes. I lived there for 5 years.
Wait. Okay. So, who takes an 8-year-old to Vegas?
It's genius.
So we went to Vegas. We did circus, but we took a helicopter ride to the Grand Canyon. And it was beautiful, and it was breathtaking. And my son was afraid to ride in the helicopter, and I got to watch him conquer his fear in literally minutes. He went from the helicopter doesn't have as much material as a plane to he was literally the co-pilot coming back. I have video of him in the front of the helicopter like this, right? Be easy, the Hawaiian side for be easy, right? But we were walking to breakfast, and he asked me, you don't have any meetings? You don't have any calls? And I said, no. And he said, you took this time off just for me? And I said, yes. And I'm thinking to myself, either this child is the best child in the whole wide world, or you were the most awful person in the whole wide world. But just be intentional, be in the moment. And I always say, pick a place and be there, right? And that solidified that for me. So just pick a place and be there.
Oh my gosh. I'm sure he is the best person in the world, and
He
so are
is.
you. But the quality, you provided him quality time.
Yes.
And he felt that connection. And you probably do that for everyone you work with too. Thank you. That was really beautiful. Yes, Alice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go a little bit more on the professional side on this answer, but I wasn't thinking we were gonna start with this question, so I'm gonna come out a little bold with some of my answers. But one of the things I learned in the last year as a leader is that, of course, I've always strived to be a good leader and be the leader that others need me to be for my team, right? So I have a group of people that work for me. But what I learned in the last year is that I need to advocate for other leaders in our organization and other even non-leaders in our organization. This is where the bold part comes out. You've all experienced some corporate bullies. There are corporate bullies, right? Yes? Yes? Okay. So we have some too. And I advocated for others that were maybe being bullied. And so I felt the need to do that in our organization, and I felt empowered to do that. I felt it was actually my responsibility to do that. So that's really been a big lesson for me. So I've always worked on myself as being a good leader, whatever. And then I was like, wait, I have to help others. I have to help others be good leaders.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, being a good leader is, doing the work on yourself, but then when the times get tough, showing what you actually really are going to do about it. So that's tremendous. Thank you. Wyman.
Last up.
Last up.
They say when you go through valley experiences, you always come out wiser. You learn things through those peaks and valleys. And after the pandemic, after the social unrest in America, after all the things that have gone on that have captured us, and man, I'm tired of learning and getting wiser. But we don't have a choice.
A lot of valleys.
We don't have a choice. And one of the things I've learned is to expect the expected. But what do you mean? Expect things to change. Mm-hmm. Change is constant. And don't be afraid when the change forces you to do something new. Matter of fact, you should be excited about the opportunity to do things new. Your son with the helicopter, he'll never look at something new with the same intrepidation that he had before, because he realized on the other side of that fear is a newfound joy.
Yes.
Come on, right? And so that's the thing that we have to embrace. And when I was speaking to someone earlier, when changes happen, if you're tuned into why me, why now, this isn't fair, who did this to me, if your antenna is tuned there, the ethos will provide answers.
Yes.
Whether they're real or perceived, it matters not. If your antenna is tuned to where's the next opportunity, I've been through this before, I've always come out landed on my feet, you'll find the reasons, opportunities that will allow you to land on your feet, get started on a tear towards the resilience that's required. In other words, to be resilient. Remember, I started out saying, expect the expected. So as we leave here today, we should all expect opportunities that will force us to be resilient. Things aren't going to go the way we planned, but you've been there before. And therefore, bring it on.
Yes.
That's what I learned.
Oh,
Yes.
that was the last question, but I brought it to the first because that's why. Because now we're ready to have
You're
a
tricky.
conversation.
You like to be tricky.
Now we're ready to have a real conversation, and you've just shown us what's important to you, and that's so unbelievably impactful. So we're going to be talking about, as the next question, about culture. At first, I want to know again who you are before I talk about where you work and how the organization that you work for embodies that culture. So the question is what have you found that's worked when building cultures? And in this, perhaps talk a bit about how you even define culture. And do you have any measures of success? So I'd love for you to build off of each other. Ted, if you want to start, and then please build off of Ted's response.
Sure. So I think maybe one of the mistakes we have, or maybe just my mistake, about culture and thinking about culture has been that, it's this thing that just kind of happens in the background, right? It's not something that you're intentional about. You just do the right things and it follows along. And I've changed my thinking on that, right? So I believe you have to be very intentional about culture. You have to So we spend a lot. So I'm a CFO. So I'm glad I got another numbers person up here with me. But we spend a lot of time talking about strategic metrics and how are we going to get from here to there, and what do the numbers need to look like, and why are our numbers not where they need to be, or how did we get them better than we thought? All that stuff. We should spend just as much time talking about our culture, right? And so one of the things that we've started doing in my organization is, we do employee engagement survey, and so we did one not quite a year ago, and then we followed up with another one 6 months later, right? And we were very intentional. The leadership was very intentional, talking about, hey, we heard this in the employee engagement surveys. Let's do something about it, right? And I went to my leaders and said, hey, I don't even care if you get it right. Do something. Show that you're trying to move the needle. And guess what? If we don't get it right, good. We learned that's not the thing to do to move the needle, right? The next time, right? But and so it was almost like people were just chomping at the bit. I mean, it wasn't something that I had to push people at. All I had to do was open the door a crack, and man, they just ran through it. And then we followed up, and we did better, right? Our numbers were better. So there's a quantitative way to look at that. Now, are we perfect? Nope. Are we ever going to be perfect? Nope. But we can still continue to make progress. And so some areas we did a lot better. Hey, what did you do, right? Some areas we still need to catch up in. So that's what we've done.
Yes. Anyone else want to talk about?
If I may, because I understand that earlier the leaders in this room shared that competing priorities can get in the way of driving culture. And I think that what Ted just hit on is very important, that you're just following up and just touching base. That is so important when you're taking that information in from your employees, is they just want to know that you're actually doing something with the data. There is nothing worse than putting a survey out there, asking for the feedback, taking it in, and then just letting it sit on a desk and gather dust. Right? You have to get out there and try things, and some things will work, and some things they may not. But I think that if employees see you trying, they will give you some grace, and that's really important. And as we're all learning in this post-pandemic world, grace is really important for us as both leaders and employees.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And I think too, if anyone else wants to add just not necessarily a curveball, but additional question of how do you even define culture? So before we even talk about, what's working when building it, how are we measuring success, how are you defining it? And then from there, how are you measuring success? I love the quantitative approach to being able to say, how are we doing? And then asking again, how are we doing? And how are we doing? Because that's how you build trust, right? A relationship. But first and foremost, how do you define it? And then, how do you measure success? Do either of you want to touch upon?
Yeah, on the how do you define it? One of the things that we haven't mentioned is race, gender. That's not culture.
Yeah.
They're individuals
Yeah.
with those identifications within an organization that has a culture, but that in and of itself does not define culture.
Yes.
Right? And so one of the things that you mentioned was what it is, what does it look like, and how are you going to use the data is important. But I think the other thing is, why is culture important? Simon Sinek, you know him, right? Why is more important than the what? If they can understand why certain behaviors need to be part of our culture, they'll understand why they need to chase after it and embrace it, right? There's a book called The Blue Zones. It's about regions of the earth where people routinely live to be centurions. And one of them is in the Greek islands there. And they looked at diet and they also looked at culture. Yes, they drank wine, a lot of it.
That's a good.
They revere their elders of the village. They don't send them to senior homes. They stay right there in the nuclear family, right? They work hard, they play hard, right? Right? That's culture. But that culture, embracing that culture, produces longevity, right? And so if you understand why you do something, as a former pilot, so the helicopter, I really like that. I used to fly helicopters. That's what brought me to Jacksonville. I was an instructor at Mayport. There's a culture in the cockpit that is not the culture in the squadron, right? And so in my house, my wife is over there, Rosemary, I've always said our house is a no drama zone. Listen,
The culture.
bring the issue, check the drama at the door. And our kids were raised in that environment. That is the culture of our home. And that culture serves us. Because getting dramatic and bringing the drama never solves problems. And it blinds you from your ability to see, and it blocks your ears from the ability to hear. So that's a culture we've embraced in our family, but the children, our kids, they're now young adults, they understand why. And guess what? Because they understand why, as they begin their families and they raise children of their own, guess what component's going to be there? Right? So as you develop culture, educating and making sure they know why you're doing something. Same thing. Why are we taking this survey? How's it going to be leveraged? Why is this behavior appropriate? How does it serve us? How does it serve our mission? It's 31 years in sales. Part of the sales culture is you know your numbers. You know what your quota is, your attainment to date. You know what marks you need to get a bonus. You know numbers. You don't have to pull out a sheet of paper. That is part of a high performance sales culture. And the fact of the matter is, I've never seen a salesperson who's had sustained success, not a flash in the pan, but sustained success that did not embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go following up with that for Angie, for what you said initially, and a lot of what you just said, Wyman. Beyond a company's stated corporate values, many see culture as unwritten rules, something that I think you were faced with. Maybe not all of them are the right rules, right? So how do you get an understanding of what those unwritten rules are, and how do you go about changing them?
Yeah, so, and if you don't mind, I'm typically a rule follower, but I want to answer a little bit.
That's the whole point. Great, I love it.
I like to follow all the rules, but I do want to hit a little bit on the last question too,
Please,
because
absolutely.
I do have, I want to share with everyone our experience at CSX that has some really, really good lessons for any organization. But let me start with the last question. So I believe culture is, you can go with a more complicated definition, but just very simply, it's taking care of the people that serve your company. You can't really be a successful company without taking care of your people. And why I say that is because CSX has been through a journey. I promise CSX is an amazing place to work. There are lots of them spread across this room. But what I will share is, I've been at CSX for a long time. We had a great culture historically, a very family-oriented culture, people that took care of each other. And we were mediocre in the financial space. We weren't that profitable. We were okay. So in 2017, about 6 years ago, we had, I'll just say, a disruption or a hostile takeover, but not the kind you read in the book. But we got a new CFO that was not nice, and he was mean, and he managed through fear. And he came in, and his goal was to make us more profitable. So the first action item was to cut 30% of our workforce. That's how we started. So that took, we did a couple tranches of that. And then he brought in his cronies from where he came from. And they also were, fearful managers, command and control, and mean and disrespectful, and you didn't get to ask why. He said, you do it, and you do it. And so the lesson here is we were becoming, and we did, so I have hindsight now, we became financially very successful in the last 5 years. But our culture is underneath the bottom of the ocean. We're coming out now, but that's where we were. Wow. And we just hired a new CEO. We've had a couple since then, but anyway. We hired a new CEO, and he literally tells everyone in our company, and it's true, I was hired to fix the culture. I'm not here to fix the railroad. You guys already run the railroad great, you're profitable, whatever. Literally, your culture stinks, and I'm here to fix that. And that his number one goal is to fix culture and to improve our customer service. And he says that the only way he's doing that is by fixing the culture. So if we treat each other respectfully and we're all aligned for this goal, then you're just naturally going to go fix the customer service. He's not actually out there, quite frankly, don't tell anyone, meeting with customers. He's meeting with all the people that run the railroad and all the people running the railroad, and improving our culture so that they can improve customer service.
And they are the customer. They're the internal customer,
that's
the
right.
best customer, most important customer.
That's right.
So that kind of actually answered the question, but I want to now follow up with what you just said, because, right, you had this really strong family culture, and then it was able to be derailed, like the word it was
say that you cannot say those words in my
I had to. It was able to be derailed, right? And so going back to that question of these unwritten rules, you know, how do you get an understanding of what those rules are when anyone comes in, when a new person comes in, when, you know, a new CEO comes in, how do you get the understanding, even as a leader? And then how do you go about changing those? If when that new person came in that was not the right fit, how in that moment could someone have said, this is not part of our culture, this doesn't work for us? No drama, only issue.
You wouldn't have a paycheck any longer if you weren't there.
Exactly. So how do you do it, right? How do you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's somewhat of a vague question. And so in my mind, the unwritten rules are the culture underlying the culture, right? So what's happening below there that is forming the culture. And by the way, you said you can do nothing about culture, and that's not the ideal approach. Here's the thing, you guys, if you don't purposefully and intentionally rally your culture the way you want it, there's going to be a culture formed. I think that's unwritten rules you're talking about.
Yep.
And you may not like that culture. And we were there. Oops, sorry, y'all. CSX was there. So in my mind, there's the terminology EQ. We use that a lot in my household. I'm trying to teach my really good IQ kid how to have an EQ. It's really hard. And so there's the EQ, like what's going on around you? Do you have awareness about what's going on around you? Do you have awareness on how you're coming across on other people? And so to find the unwritten rules, I mean, again, I think it's sort of the EQ, like, hey, look around and feel what's happening. And then if you don't like it, and it's not really aligned with your culture where you want to be, that's where being the advocate for others or the advocate for the right thing is really important. And that is sort of what I've been learning over the last year or so, more so than any other time period, is you have to stand up for what you believe is right. And sometimes that could turn into a bad consequence, possibly, but I have personally said I will always stand for what's right, and if I got fired because I was trying to do something right, then I'm okay with that, actually. I don't think I'm going to get fired, but if you go all the way there in your brain and you're like, oh my God, do I really stand up for this? My answer is yeah, you do, if you feel strongly about it, and I feel strongly about doing the right things.
Absolutely. And anyone else want to share, how do you go about changing unwritten rules? How do you first know, how do you even know them? How do you learn them? And then how do you go about changing them if need be?
Sure. So I'd like, so I think vocabulary is very important, right? So I think it's very important that you latch on to some words that are important. So there's a whole bunch of JEA people out here today. So our CEO sends out an email every week, right? And so we're working on budget right now, so there was a lot of stuff about budget in that email. One of the emails, he told a story about how his grandparents were killed in a car accident. I mean, so they range, they're all over the place, okay? The point I'm trying to put, they're all wonderful. But every one of those emails has the word courtesy and respect in it. Right? And that's one of our core values is respect. We treat each other and our customers with courtesy and respect. At JEA, you will hear or read the words courtesy and respect several times a week. All right? So I think it's important to have words that people can gravitate towards, and then they can make it part of their story, right? And so yes, you're always going to have those unwritten rules, but I think the stronger and more intentional you can be about the written rules, then that will overlay those unwritten rules. Yes. and push them down to where they're no longer the case. I love listening to your story about CSX. I was getting deja vu. I got all those goosebumps and everything because we had a very similar situation in my organization, right, at JEA. And changing that culture. I think my boss was brought in to change the culture at JEA. I think that's part of the reason I'm at JEA. When he offered me a job, he didn't say, "Hey, you are the greatest financial wizard in the municipal industry. I gotta have you work for me."
He
right?
felt it.
Right. He said, "I trust you." All right. So I think that is important, and so maybe you're not in an organization that is struggling to change a culture, but it's like everything else. If you're not intentional about it, things will slip on you, right? Whether no matter what it is, right? If you want to be good at something, you got to keep practicing every day, and you got to keep working on your culture every day. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't give someone the why behind, as you were saying before, they'll make up their own why, and then they'll make up their own answers, and they'll make up their own culture, a subculture underneath. So I think I'd love you could always carry on the response from this question, and it's a fluid conversation. It's like The View. We're all in The View. So we're seeing the workplace evolving globally with practices such as remote work, the 4-day week, flexible hours, or unlimited holiday, because being more widely accepted. How do you see these practices? I think in general, just flex work post-pandemic. Let's just talk about all of the things that have changed our workplace structure, affecting workplace culture.
I'll take that one. Well, as we piggyback on the last comments,
I got you. Great.
Here we go. I think if you go into a place of worship, a lot of times you'll see a statement of faith, what you believe in. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a corporate environment, there should be a statement of what you believe in, and it should be available to everyone externally and internally. But it needs to be followed up with action. After the George Floyd incident, remember riots broke out on that weekend. At 10 a.m. in the morning, the CEO of IBM sent a video broadcast out to every employee worldwide saying that he stood for justice, did not stand for violence. However, if you wanted to protest, to make your voice known, make sure you do it not representing the company, but yourself, and do it safely. Do you hear what he just said? He didn't have to go to the board. He didn't have to have a meeting. He took it upon himself to let the people know that his actions, his statement were consistent with the beliefs of the company. And he didn't believe in violence, but there's ways to protest and make your voice known in accordance with the law And he supported those who wanted to do that. And then he said, and be safe. That's how you establish culture. It's not just what's written in the annual report, it's what you see day by day. And what are you as a CEO, as a manager, as a leader, willing to stick your neck out and support? What are you willing to be to risk? Are you willing to risk getting fired? If it's the right thing and consistent with your core beliefs and your culture, definitely it's something to walk the plank over. And they see that and oh, this guy's real. This company's real. That's how you develop it. With regards to, flex and working from home, those who've been around a while in this community know IBM has not had a brick and mortar building in Jacksonville, Florida since like 2001 or so. We've been working flex for a while. We've been leveraging video conferences for a while. So the pandemic was a yawner with regards to, seriously, there was no adjustment to be made, right? And so what the culture there had embraced it, hey, we do a lot of training, a lot of meetings, business with clients internally and externally via web, right? So there's an etiquette around conference calls, WebExes, right? How many of you know that, right? When's the last time you heard you on mute? Right? I've heard babies crying. I've heard lawnmowers. I've heard things hammering in the background. I've heard English bulldogs snoring.
Always.
Right? But that's a culture. What do I mean, culture? It doesn't bother me anymore. It's like it's not even there. Right? So you embrace. So one of the parts of the culture is the adage that we used to use in the military: you adjust, you adapt, you overcome. Adjust, adapt, overcome. No time complaining about this. Just figure it out, make the adjustment, and get the job done. Right? And we're figuring out how to do that. We're also figuring out in corporate now mindfulness, meditation, holistic health. That's not being pushed, but it's being embraced. There's a difference.
Yes.
Not being pushed, but it's in being embraced. Because if we produce better people, by default, we'll have better employees.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that the idea of, so there's some people that want everybody back in the office, right? And they want everybody back the way it was. And then there's this other group that's like, hey, I like this, right? And so trying to walk that, but I think it gives a lot of insight into people's personalities, right? So I said on my card, I'm an introverted dog lover. I'm an introvert. So when I describe an introvert, I'm talking about how do I get my energy, right? So I'm going to count it. I had a college professor say, accountants are a lot like morticians, so if there's any morticians out here, I don't mean to offend you, but we like to be left alone with our work, right? And so, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to be really tired today because this, while I am really enjoying this takes a lot of energy away from me, right? Now there's other people that as soon as they will be done with this, and maybe some of you on the panel will be this way, you're going to be like, you had 7 cups of coffee. You're going to have so much energy, you can't, you know. So the people that like working from home, they get that energy from themselves, being in quiet places. At 5:30, whatever time they quit, they're like, oh, I'm not nearly as tired as when I'm in the office and I got people coming in my office and talking to me, and the drop-bys, right, where people just kind of walk by, hey, how are you? And they come in and sit down for 15 minutes and talk to you, which is very nice, but I'm like, my boss is waiting for this. So I think that whole culture of understanding who we work with, and so, you know, I'm having to, so I got some people that want everybody to be together, I got some people that don't want to ever see anybody ever again, and somewhere in between on the spectrum, right? And so I think you still have to have some type of interaction, right? And so, hey, I've only been in Jacksonville for a year and a half, but I've spent almost my whole life in the South. So how do we do it? Food, right? You know, spring for the Jimmy John's lunch box, right? And have people come in and hey, you know, and that'll feed that group that needs to be around other people, and then let other people go home, and that'll feed them too. So I think you have to figure out how to balance it, and you have to look at who you're working with, what work groups. Now, hey, guess what? I work for a utility company. Linemen cannot work from home. All right, it just doesn't work right. So we have a lot of people that, hey, they got to get up in there and out there working every day. My stores people, you know, they can't issue stock from their house, right? They got to come to the warehouse. But I've got a lot of accountants. We have a lot of engineers. We have a lot of people that spend their day in front of a screen, or multiple screens, actually. Where those screens are, do they really matter? I mean, I have a budget analyst that lives in Wyoming.
Do any of them work in a mortician's office? Or no?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Okay.
think so,
Okay.
but
Yes. And please go next, and then I have a
So-
follow-up for you, Kawanza, after.
I just need to make it clear for the record that I am the accountant that is an extreme extrovert, according to Myers-Briggs and according to everything I know about myself. And so my company, as well as yours, we can't run a railroad from home, right? The railroaders have to be out on the railroad. That's just how that is. And so we're an outdoor sport company. You combine that with my personality of wanting to be around people all the time. I love people. People are my people. So what we did learn, I think, at CSX, and by the way, we're probably more in the office than maybe anyone in this room, I'm guessing. I've been in the office since September of 2000. So I've been in the office 5 days a week since then. Excuse me. But that's not true for everyone. So we do have people in the corporate office that work from home up to 2 days a week. But here's what I would say, and all the lessons that you taught us this morning too. You cannot replace the human connections through the video camera. It's just not the same. It's just not. And nowadays, which really frustrates me, so for all of you CSXers in the room, nowadays people don't even show their face. They're just on, okay? And that really, really drives me crazy. So I usually call people out and say, let me see your face. I can't wait to see your face. What we did learn, though, at CSX, while we were at home, when we were all at home all the time, is that can we do our day jobs from home overnight without warning? Yes, we actually did, and I'm an accountant, and we were at the end of a quarter, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know how we're gonna close the books and release earnings from home overnight, and we did. It was amazing. So yes, we can do our day jobs from home. What I believe is incredibly hard, I did not say impossible, incredibly hard, is advancing big projects, so strategic related type projects that take a lot of collaboration. And the other thing, and if y'all have tricks, please find me at lunch on this, but I don't know how to develop the next generation of leaders at home, especially when their video's off. Sure, can I send them to courses? Yeah, and now the courses are even virtual, and so can you go take these things and learn more? Yeah, you can, but that's none of that stuff that I learned in the textbook or in a classroom is actually what helped me be successful. It was all the other stuff, right? In the office, my boss grabbing me, asking me to go to this meeting with the CEO and show him this or whatever. And the interactions in the hallway, yeah, some of them will reduce productivity, but some of them actually increase productivity, right? You see someone in the cafeteria, you go, oh yeah, where are we on that one thing? And then you have this little offsite meeting that you would have never been able to do on on video because you know why? It wasn't purposeful. We didn't plan a meeting. We ran into each other. So yeah, can you be more purposeful from home and find ways to connect with others around your company or learn more? Yeah, those are very purposeful. But what you can't do is the not purposeful part from home. It's really hard. I'm not saying you 100% can't do it. I'm just saying it's very hard.
Yeah.
So if anyone has tricks on how to develop the next generation from home.
Well,
let
I'm
me
going to
know.
be asking you a question next, but I will say in response to all of this, I think it has to do with, let's just see how different we all are as people working in one environment, going back to culture versus the people within the organization having their own culture and fitting into that culture. So now we have two accountants that couldn't be more on the opposite spectrums, right? Too specific. You want to literally work as important. Like you want to be so, focused on your work in a way that gives you energy, right? And then have more planned, intentional meetings where you can then go deep because you're actually prepping yourself energetically. And you want serendipity, you want that openness, you want people to flow in and out because that's where you get your energy. And so I think it does go back to culture and how we embrace each and every learner and person and acknowledge their needs, but also then go back to the organization's culture and say, but this is what we believe in. So if you're going to work here, we're going to be doing regular events, or you need to buy someone a coffee or whatever that may be. I don't want to go give a whole talk. I already did that. So now we're going to go back around what are your recommendations for driving culture in a hybrid environment? Maybe not for the whole next generation, but in general, what are some recommendations you have?
Yes, and I would actually like to
Let's do it.
Keep
going.
It's going to speak across all that
Beautiful.
we have just spoken about.
Great.
We've done a lot of research about this at ViStar, and at ViStar, we have what we call a hybrid environment, and so we do individual contributors. We ask to come in one day a week, and you pick it. People managers, we ask to come in 3 days because they have to collaborate across other divisions and they have to do strategy. So we ask them to come in 3 days. But then we do this other thing and we really see just the energy around the campus change. We do remote July. For the entire month of July, all of our meetings take place via Zoom. And when we get to June, the energy just changes on that campus. And I have to say, I'm one of those people. And here's why. I'm a transplant. I'm new to Jacksonville. I just moved here. It'll be 2 years in August, but I'm from Buffalo, New York. And I believe that Lucifer is my neighbor come June. Never experienced anything like this before in my life. So it's nice to be able to go to Buffalo where the weather is actually reasonable because the abominable snowman lives in Buffalo from August through June, right? So, and I joke, I love my hometown, and I absolutely adore Jacksonville. But there are a lot of people that are having this type of experience in this community, and it allows people to have that type of flexibility. And truly, in all seriousness, we have done a lot of research on engagement and work experiences. And what we found is companies that have flexibility have the higher engagement levels. Is it perfect? Absolutely. What you said, no. But is it higher? Yes. And what we find is, and this is age old, highly engaged employees will go to the end of the earth for their companies. And that's what you want to achieve. So I was goofing off last night on Instagram. Can you tell that I can goof off? Is that evident? Right. So I'm goofing off on Instagram, and I saw a gentleman, he was driving into work, and he was crying, in the caption beneath said, driving into work for a meeting that could take place via Zoom, right? And he's like, and it's hilarious, right? I saw a mug, I was in Savannah last week, and it's like this mug was my award for another meeting that could have clearly been an email, right? So we talk about culture, right? But there is an entire culture that is evolving around things that could have taken place more efficiently. I look at my administrative assistant, whom I absolutely adore. She is more effective at home. I am more effective in the office. And she asked me the other day, she said, are you more effective at home or in the office? She said, can you get a lot done when you're at home? And I said, absolutely not, because Chadwick will come 3 o'clock. Chadwick comes and sits on my lap and thinks that Zoom is time for him to make cameo appearances in my meetings. And that's not what that's for.
Yep.
And so I like to be in the office. She can concentrate more at home. So when you have this level of flexibility, people just respond. I also think that when you're looking at what levers can you pull, so clearly you want employees to come into the office. I think that we should start looking at what types of things can we do, activities can we implement to make the workplace a destination. So from our employee engagement survey, we found that our employees wanted more engagement with our senior team. They wanted more interaction. So last week, we put on Employee Appreciation Week. And in that, we put out an email that said, hey, come join our chiefs, we mean chefs, and our whole senior team, from the CEO to our chief operating officer, our chief legal officer, we were all in our cafeteria serving bacon, grits. It was funny to watch people's reaction to grits. Some people love them, some people don't. I think grits are the best thing ever invented, but it's funny how this happens. I mean, we're all talking about this, but people were loving it. Some people were interacting with each other. Some people love being able to see each other. People that haven't seen each other for a long time. They love being able to interact with their chiefs. It was amazing. We put it out there, people came. We had over 500 people come through that breakfast. Wow. Right. Our workforce is 2,100 people, and we're across multiple states, right? And we have our branch teams as well. Just like you, our branch teams, unfortunately, we have to be there for our member, right? So I think that we have to, as I said, we have to look at making the workplace a destination and creating these opportunities where we're intentional for people to have the chance to interact with leadership and see us, I love what your CEO is doing, in a more informal way, see us as human beings, see that we put our pants on, right, one leg at a time, that we have families, that we managed the career. We started from the bottom, and now we're here so that we can build these mentorship relationships where it's not just mentoring over just a cup of coffee, but it's actual sponsorship where we're willing to put our name on an individual, our reputation on an individual, to actually help them grow their careers. And I think that that's one way that we can look at growing in a hybrid environment.
Beautiful, absolutely. And I think, again, so many of these are ideas that bubbled to the top and then they were implemented, right? Like that idea was something that was really unique and interesting, but it worked. And so I'm so curious to anyone on the panel, a lot of teams can get stuck in the ideation cycle and kill ideas before they have a chance. Like if that idea came up in a meeting, you'd be like, no, that's never gonna work. Who wants, me as the executive to give them bacon and grits? Like, well, 500 people actually do. Right. So how do you go from ideation to action and ensure all ideas get a fair shot? And this is, again, about a culture, but just in general, what are all of your thoughts? anyone can answer.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Wyman,
Yeah,
because I haven't
I'll
heard
take
from
a
you in
shot
a
at
minute.
it,
So
right? But like before, can I tie back?
always,
Just real
you
quick.
have to ask. This is again
This is a
fluid.
perfect example because we talked about two accountants who are one introvert, one extrovert. We're talking about hybrid, and there are reasons why it works and there are reasons why it can't. I grew up in Kissimmee, Florida, pre-Disney.
You have to say that.
Is one of the cow capital of Florida. One of the largest. Florida is one of the largest beef producing states in the union, right? And so I have classmates that are still in the ranching business. They can't work from home. So it's obvious that it's not one size fits all. And you shouldn't look at it as all in or all out. Flexibility is the key. And what should drive what's right is what's most productive and effective. In sales, we used to say, salespeople never eat lunch alone. They're either eating with a client or they're eating with a colleague that's helping them get more clients, right? And so that human touch has got to be there, even when you were, pre-COVID and all that stuff, when you were going into the office, that was still the rule of thumb, and it's still the rule of thumb there because there's no substitute for the human touch, as you mentioned, right? And so the other thing is, we just can't throw our employees to the abyss of virtual working. We need to educate them on how to maintain their health, because sitting in a chair all day long is not good for you. You tend to work longer when you work from home.
Yes.
You tend to skip breakfast,
Yes.
lunch, and dinner if you can, right? Particularly if you don't have kids.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times kids will make you go fix lunch.
I
Or in my
usually start
case,
happy hour while working.
My 94-year-old dad is living with us, and he makes me go fix lunch, right? Some breaks in there, right? So it does have some advantages, but we also need to teach and educate on how to leverage this technology, because just like Chat GPT, right? Here's a technology that's out ahead of governance policy. And it's happened several times over my career, right? Where a technology will come out and there are no rules to govern it. And so right now, corporations, it would be wise to go to the legal folks and start developing governance policies to handle Chat GPT, because it's coming. There's issues coming. Trust me on that, right? And so technology will always be evolving. The way we leverage it will always force what we do to evolve. In the 90s, they talk about productivity of employees. Went through the roof. Why? Technology. You know why? It used to be I'd carry a beeper. Some of you are too young to remember that. Seriously. But when we had cell phones, if I had a 3-hour drive to Tampa, I'd schedule 3 hours worth of calls.
Yes.
Does that make me more productive? Absolutely. Right? Because I get the calls done while I have the windshield time. Is that the healthiest way to go? Right? No. Right? And so again, there's technology. We owe it to those who work in our culture to teach them how to leverage it to not only produce the best for the company, organization, but the best for themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that.
Yes, and then how do you get those individuals that are speaking up for what they need and speaking up for what others need? How do you create a culture where those ideas can actually be implemented and not just on the spot?
So I know on the technology side, design thinking is a big, issue. And basically, in a nutshell, it requires you to forget everything that you know and look at everything as if you're seeing it the first time. It's amazing how many insights you'll gain from just doing that. And then not judge what you hear for the first time or make conclusions, but consider the possibilities and ask the question, why? Why is this a good idea? Why shouldn't we do that? Yes. And then when you're working in a team, in a collaboration, don't discount someone else's truth. One of the things in business and in life is your truth may not be the truth. your truth it may be a truth, but there may also be other truths that go with it. And so you embrace that. In other words, you don't discard anything. Every idea is a good idea because even a bad idea allows you to build on top of it. You see, that's why you can't discard the bad stuff, because the bad stuff will resurface with a different face on it. If you didn't acknowledge it the first time, you won't recognize it.
Bigger
Right?
and bolder.
Come on, right?
As a CEO.
So you created a collegial atmosphere where there are no bad ideas and encourage people to participate. You get everything, and collectively you shake it out. Why? Because you're seeing, if we had an idea, there are 5 different perspectives on the stage. And we can look at the same idea and see different merits and see different faults.
Yes.
And it's only when we collaborate that we can get that which is the absolute best effort.
Beautiful.
And I think
Yeah.
it's so I see this a lot with my young leaders, right? And when I say young leaders, it doesn't necessarily mean their age, but they're in new roles, in leadership roles, right? And so they feel it's their job, their responsibility to make sure everything's perfect, right? And so they are constantly on the lookout for the problem, right? And so no comes very quickly when you're like that. And so if you are a young leader or you have young leaders, I encourage you to help them find ways to yes, right? I mean, so there are certain things we can't do, right? And in my industry, safety is not a area where you have negotiations, right? We follow the protocols because that's how we keep people safe. I'm not saying, well, do we really need to wear our PPE? Yes. Okay. So you can't get too loosey-goosey with it. But hey, I want to do it this way. Okay. That's not the way I would do it. That doesn't mean no. Right? Keep that to yourself. That's not the way I would do it. And so if you're, maybe keep a little bit more of an eye on it, right? So it doesn't, sorry, the train doesn't get too far off the tracks, right?
It's just good expression.
Sorry.
It's just good expressions. Yeah, absolutely.
My dad worked for the other railroad for 30 years, so I could go on. I got all kinds of railroad puns, but anyway, I think that's important as leaders and mentoring young leaders. Is just like you said. Don't let them. Everybody has a different perspective on things, and just because you saw that not work well someplace else, some other time, we're all victims of our own histories, right? Try not to get to know too fast.
There's a great improv, yes and. So instead of just saying no, yes and. No, I'm just kidding. So now for the last question, I'd love for each of you to actually go and answer this. If you were to tell one person thank you for helping me become the person I am today, who would it be and what did they do? Why don't you start, Angie, and then we're all going to do this. So.
Yeah, so my answer is going to initially sound a little cliche, but there's a good story behind it. So my answer is my dad. And so let me give you a little bit of our family history. My dad is an immigrant from Italy, and he came over here when he was 10 to find the American dream, or his dad brought them over for the American dream. My dad grew up incredibly poor. They did not have running water or electricity in the house that he grew up in. I did go to Italy last summer, and I got to see this house, so that's crazy. And so he came to America. He couldn't speak English. He couldn't pass high school. He later got his GED. Then fast forward, it was not optional whether I was going to college. I would be the first person on my dad and my mom's side to go to college. And it was not even like optional. He didn't allow it to be optional. He's like, baby, you're going to college. You're going to go to college. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm going to college. And so I was the first person to get a degree in my family. And here I am. So the other thing I would tell you is my mom and my dad both had 2 jobs when I was growing up, they both had 2 jobs. And so I saw nothing but amazing work ethic, and I think that has helped me be who I am. So my work ethic is at that same level, I would say. I think I have 2 jobs in one. I think I work 80 hours a week. I'm just kidding, not anymore. But yeah, so
That's
that
that
would be my
catalyst
answer.
statement, why hard work matters to you. So
Yeah.
that just created beautiful context. Do you want to go next?
So it's May, right? So I think it's only appropriate that I let you all know that I would not be sitting in this chair without my mom. And I told her, I call her every morning, and I make sure I talk to her every night. And my mom is retired now, so there's typically maybe some random conversation that starts, "Are you busy? You kidding me?" Like in the middle of the day, "I'm working. I got years of this left to go. You paid your dues." But I told her the other day driving in, I saw this sign on a flower shop, and it said, "If moms were flowers, I'd pick you." And I said that to her, and I would because our parents growing up taught us, it started out with school. School was our job. That was our contribution to the home. But our dad's journey stopped very early in life. I was only 7 years old. Our dad was 41 when he passed away. And my mom raised my sister and I, and it was always, work hard, but be loving, love God, family first, just, and I have to say this, my mom did not go to college, so I'm actually the first person in my family to graduate from college as well, but I'm the youngest of my siblings. But my sister got married and went back to school and got her degree. And so my mom, a single mom, okay, raised 2 girls. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer for the 2nd largest credit union in Florida. My sister is the CEO of the United Way of Buffalo in Erie County. Give it up for my mom.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
My mom is retired from the United States Postal Service.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. This is why we're here, right? Ted, and then Wyman, we'll close up. So.
Okay, so they gave us the questions beforehand, all right? But we didn't compare notes. But mine's my mom too, all right? So now I didn't have the tragedy in my life that you did, but I have my hardship too. So I'm dyslexic. All right, so I had a learning disability in school, and so I'm almost 57 years old. And so in 1975, when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, people didn't even know what that meant, okay? And so it's hard not to get emotional when you talk about your mom, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, so I was at that stage, I don't know, 3rd grade maybe, and you bring home the spelling test, and there's all those TH words and those WH words, and so if you're dyslexic, man, that is a freaking nightmare. I still can't spell those words, all right? All those letters just jumble up. I know there's some THs and some E's and some A's and some R's in there, but man, I cannot get them in the right order. Anyway, my mom would not, so I have an older sister, and I remember her going and talking to the counselor and the assistant principal at my elementary school, and I remember these words very distinctly because I always thought my sister was so much smarter than me, right? I mean, 5 years older than you, and she's a very smart She was a very smart girl. She's a very smart woman now. But anyway, she's like, my son is just as smart as my daughter, right? I can see how they figure out things and they learn things. There's something wrong, In math, he's great, but he's not reading on level. He cannot pass these spelling tests. So I still have post-traumatic stress from spelling tests. I swear I did, because my mom was not letting me fail. So I don't know, I had kids and spelling tests are on Fridays, right? And you get the 20 words, right? Same way it was 50 years ago. They're still doing it, right? And with my boys, on Thursday night, hey, let's do a little practice spelling test, right? And you call out the words, and then okay, you misspelled 4 of them. Go write them 5 times, and then call them out. Okay, you only missed 1. That's 95. Good enough, or Dad, okay, whatever. So we started on Tuesday night at my house, okay? Tuesday night, and 20 times, right? So I never learned how to spell any of those words. I memorized them by Friday, right? That's all it was for me. But my mom was tenacious, and so she found somebody. So my assistant principal husband just happened to be a pediatrician. So she's like, why don't you go and talk to my husband? At the time, I was in Birmingham, Alabama. That's where the University of Alabama's medical school is. They have a center there. It's called the Center for Children with Disabilities, right? And it is all types of disabilities. But that's how I got diagnosed with dyslexia. So it was great having a diagnosis. They still didn't know what to do with it in 1975, right? But it gave, hey, there's nothing, I'm different. Nothing broke with me. My mom taught me that, right? I learned that when I was 8. So.
And now you do that for others. Yeah, she's an advocate.
And so,
That's
hey,
amazing.
I can't do that. I don't do it that way, but I do it my way.
Yes,
right. So we are so similar and so different. You said you were a rule follower. Well, I don't like to think of myself as a rule breaker, but I have many times used the phrase, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes, right?
Love it. Absolutely.
They're guidelines.
Yeah. So I encourage you, right? So one of the things that we do, or I do at JEA, is I show a TED Talk every other week. So everybody knows what TED Talks are, right? And we show the TED Talk, and here. So I've been doing it for almost 10 years. I did it at another organization. We used to sit in a room like this, right? And 50, 60 people might come in, watch the TED Talk first thing on a Friday morning, and we watch it, and then we talk about it, right? Now I do it in a room, not quite this big, but it's still pretty big. There's 7 people there. But there's 200 people online, right? And they're watching the TED Talk. The important thing is not the TED Talk, all right? That's a platform to jump off from. Every one of those TED Talks I tie to one of our core value statements. And it's not me, it's the interaction with the group, right? What did you feel about that? Well, this happened to me one time, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened, and let me tell you, I want to tell you about and there's this incredible dialogue that starts taking place, right? And you talk about wanting to breed a culture.
Giving people permission. Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
So find your thing.
Yes.
So TED Talks was my thing,
them.
right? They stole my name. So I get to, I get to have a little bit with it. Find your thing with your coworkers and subordinates and superiors. Find your thing and go do it. Sorry.
Wonderful. Love it. Wyman, bring us home.
Okay, so rounding third base, coming home, and there's mom sitting at home plate. Okay, so this is May, and I was actually born on Mother's Day.
Wow.
A few years ago. But she led by example. She's an educator. She grew up in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. If you're familiar with Mississippi, you may recognize that. It was the first town incorporated by freed slaves. Mound Bayou, Mississippi, very historical. Her dad was a sharecropper, starting out in agriculture there. She went to school and majored in education, got a master's in education, which brought her to Kissimmee to teach at the then K through 12 segregated Kissimmee High School. But throughout the years, she worked her way up, being persistently excellent. Her Denzel Washington once was talking about what are the keys to success. He says, you gotta have initiative, because you don't start, you never get anywhere. But it doesn't do you any good to start if you're not persistent. So you have to be persistent, and you have the initiative. Initiative takes a little chutzpah, because it forces you to get out of your comfort zone. And so she did that, ended up being the director of Title I, Chapter 1 down in Osceola County. But she was also the first elected official of color, male or female, in Kissimmee. It was a city council down there. So she ran there, and so pioneering, taking risks, being first, and thinking nothing of it, like it was normal. I also got my temperament from her, right? So she ones that taught me, if someone comes and they're angry, in other words, they're giving you an invitation to participate in their dysfunction. It's okay to turn the invitation down and walk away.
It's a good one.
Right? And so that kind of wisdom she imparted in me, and it has served me extremely well. But I think the most important thing, like I said, she was an educator and a teacher, but she was also the rabbi of the house, the teacher, my faith. And she taught me it's more important to be confident in God than being confident in yourself. Because when you lack confidence and you still have confidence in our Creator, it's a game changer. Wow. So I would have to put my mom.
I will leave you with all of that. Thank you all so much for those beautiful words. And thank you for your moms and dads for what they've done for you. Thank you. What is our plan, everyone? We're done? We're wrapped up? Our timing is good? Questions? Does anyone have any questions? Please, whatever comes to you. We've gone personal, so go personal.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Hello. This question is for anyone on the panel. How do you promote presence equity in the hybrid environment at your organization, ensuring that everyone's recognized equally, whether they're in the office in front of you, on a Zoom call? It's difficult, and I'm just curious what you're doing at your organizations.
So I think on video calls, the hand raising little icon is the most important thing on there, right? And so try to have somebody looking for the hands, right? And encourage people to raise hands, because so if you're in a whole room with people, it's almost a little bit easier to overtalk on people a little bit. Man, when you're on a video call, you can't hear anything, right? So I think that using that little raise your hand feature, encourage people, say at the start, hey, stop me, raise your hand, anytime. I think that helps.
And we host a virtual town hall, and we're intentional about the speakers that we choose. So making certain that we're coming at all levels. And I think you called it presence equity. I'm gonna be honest with you. I love that term. It's my first time hearing that. But that's more about, for us, it's more about career visibility and allowing them to get that practice and showcasing the work, because really I think it was President Obama that looked around and said, I want all of the smart people that are doing the work to give me the update, and that's what we're going after.
So I think, let me rephrase that too. How do you find maybe future leaders that might not be in the office? How do you recognize outstanding performance if you're not seeing them daily?
Yeah. So peer recognition. We have an activity, a platform that we use to get social. It's called, it's through the Achievers platform, but we call it MyStar. It's a pun for us on ViStar. And it's broadcast throughout the entire company, but when a peer recognizes someone, another peer, the manager is automatically notified, and then you can boost that recognition. The manager can give points. We have a partnership with our marketing department that you can use it to purchase merchandise, and you can get ViStar swag or other items and like. But more importantly, it's the peers that know that work is being done, and it's the recognition factor that comes out of that. And you can see that. And we can see who's being recognized the most through feeds, and we can also see who's doing the most recognizing as well, because we think that's an indicator of leadership as well.
Did you want to add something, Wyman?
Yeah, I was going to say, in the Zoom format, the video conferences, if you're hosting, you're a facilitator. And you cannot do that job alone. You need to assign someone to watch the chat.
Yeah.
You need to assign someone to watch the hands going up. With regards to recognizing people, some people aren't comfortable being on screen. By the way, with this on-screen thing, culture, if it's a video conference, your camera's on. Period.
Thank you.
Period. Right? You know, and unless there's some extreme circumstance, but that's part of the culture to make sure, you know, everyone participates, because it's easy to get disengaged when the camera's off and everybody knows it, right? And so why play with it? Why tempt, right? Take the temptation away, get your camera on, and come to the WebEx with your game face on, whatever that means to you, okay? And so you have somebody to watch the chat and watch the comments. Some people put profound statements in the comments, in the chat, and they're not recognized. Why? Because you're leading, you don't have time to read it. But if you have someone that says, hey, I got a great comment here, James said X, Jane said Y, and things, you know, to make sure they're recognized and they feel valued because their contributions to the meeting is being recognized. And so they're more likely to be more engaged in the meeting and look forward to coming back. The other thing, as an individual coaching point, if you're coaching people, the next generation of leaders, you've got to write your own press. I know, man, I saw some folks I know from JA when I was on the board, and they remember me hammering, it's not the Times Union's job to tell our story. It's our job. It's your job to tell your story. So it's an old adage, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Same thing to your careers and the folks that you're coaching. If nobody is aware of the excellent job, your contributions, you will not get credit for it. So we used to do this capsule letters for clients, you know, a capsulated summary of what we contribute to your business the prior quarter. And it comes out quarterly. Get in the habit, coach folks to do the same for themselves. Here are my contributions. Here's how I added to the bottom line. Here's some ideas I championed. Here's some teams I worked on. Here's where I volunteered. This is what in my purview, my job description. But because I belong and because I'm engaged, I volunteered to help this person out. And you do a capsulated summary. And by the way, when the interview reviews, it's time to do that, it's easy for you because you just take the summaries of the 4 quarters prior to. But again, visibility is key, because in the on-prem environment, some of the folks who got promoted and recognized were the most vocal, not the most productive.
Yes.
They're the ones who talked about and promoted themselves. Meanwhile, some of us had to overcome our cultural norm, which is you don't brag about yourself. Come on, right? You're silent.
Yeah.
And me coming from the military, that's not how you get promoted. You get promoted by doing your job. And there's a panel there that reviews your productivity, and politics is not part of the equation. Popularity is not part of the equation. I get to corporate America, it took a minute, but I figured it out. I missed some opportunities because I didn't figure it out. But I'm saying in a hybrid environment, you still have to tell your story. And as leaders, we still have to be proactive about recognizing and giving everyone an opportunity to contribute. And on a call, on a particular team call, not allow someone to sit with the hands under their legs with their camera off.
Yep.
And so kind of like what I said earlier, it's, and again, we're hybrid at CSX, and even though I'm there every day, it doesn't mean our team is, but I said earlier, it's harder to do certain things, and I think that's what you're saying, right? You have to figure out a way how to get recognized and maybe promote yourself more than if you were in the office and people were just seeing it. I think there was a question over here.
May I? And this isn't the question, but just while we're on this subject, because something that has just always been hard in the history of managing careers. And I just read an article about this. Women do not tell their stories in performance evaluations. And performance evaluations are going to have the greatest impact on your ability to be able to grow wealth. That's where your raises are going to, that's where your raise is going to come from. So please, I love what you're saying about keeping the notes and knowing what you have done over every quarter. That is so critical. Keep the sticky notes on your computer screen and just minimize them, or have a Word document, something that you are tracking your accomplishments, and write a mini novel when it comes time for your performance review, because this is important for you. This is going to make a difference for you and your future self.
I think we have time for one or two more questions depending on how we want to answer the question. So let's see.
Hi, I'm Rochelle. This is not a question. This is to say thank you for your openness and your vulnerability and your willingness to share all that you've shared. It has been very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
One of the issues that you addressed, or all of you addressed in kind of your own way, was this distinction between people who have to be physically present for their job and others who can work remotely. What kind of strategies have you seen within your organizations or heard about from others that can help avoid some of the resentment that builds with the people who have to be, working the lines or at their desk serving, in-person customers? Just curious about any kind of strategies for, helping to avoid that resentment that exists for those who are deemed to have the benefit of, working from their, desk at home in their pajamas. Like that's that concept. Like how do you tackle that?
One lever that we pulled last year at ViStar was a paid differential we implemented. So we called it a member facing. So we attached it to the job code and we increased $1 for our hourly pay. So it's an extra $1 per hour, and we call it a member facing differential, and it's an acknowledgement that these individuals that are showing up for our members every day and are delivering unbelievable service in person, face to face, they don't have the ability to work from home. And they are showing up, and as I said, providing this unbelievable service. So that job code has an additional $1 per hour attached to it. If an individual moves out of the job code and goes into a back office position, that $1 differential goes away.
Yeah.
Is that true still in the office too, though? Like if you weren't
It's
member
only
facing?
if you're member facing. So we have branches
I got you.
out there. So that's why we're calling it a member facing differential, but it's for our branch offices.
I see.
So if it's, so, you know, of course, some job codes will have the same pay. So, but if it's, you go into the back office because you want to take that job opportunity, then you're acknowledging that you're no longer in a branch. So that dollar goes away.
Yeah. My comment is supports that. When I talk to young people when they go to college, I remind them, and if any college professors in there, you may throw something at me. The purpose of college is not to get a diploma. The purpose of college is to acquire a set of skills that maximizes the value you bring to the marketplace. The more value you bring to the marketplace, the more you make. No one is working or employing you because of a benevolence, just a good heart. They're hiring you because of the value you bring to the company. The more value you bring to the company, the more you get paid. Any company that is client-centric, customer-facing, is the heart and soul of the company, there's tremendous value there for someone who does it well. And you can't do it well from your desk at home, right? And so it reminds me when I was, in a previous life, when I was on the board at FSCJ, it was right at the beginning of when websites were being developed, and webmasters at the time were getting paid about 60 grand with a certificate, no degree. They couldn't conjugate a sentence. They couldn't spell. You know what? It didn't matter because they could run the website. That was their value.
Yes.
And we had tenured PhD credentialed professors in liberal arts who saw what they were making and they're about ready to riot. Even though at that point, as an employee, you could take any course for free, nobody volunteered to become a webmaster. They chose to do what they do. And a lot of times, as you know, your paycheck isn't the final thing. If you're not happy, if you're going to get ulcers and die at early age, pursuing a higher pay, that's stupid.
Yes.
So again, there's choice there. If you want more, bring more value. Figure out how to bring more value. You could probably figure out how to bring more value from home if you work hard enough. And you could stay home, have your cake and eat it too.
Thank you
Well,
all
can-
so much.
Can I make one comment too?
Can we make one comment? Yes, we can. We can. Absolutely, we
So,
can.
breaking the rules, sorry.
No. What rules?
So there have always been lots of differences between jobs. So this is a new difference, right? And so it's like, oh my gosh. So I imagine that the people that are the tellers, that might not be the right name, but I think we know, they can't all go to lunch at the same time, right? The people in the back office, they can, right? It's different. So in my industry, guess what? If there's a storm tonight, there's going to be a bunch of people working to get utility poles back up and power back on. And that's the way it's always been, right? I don't think my accountants are going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, oh, I got to do some accounting because I know the electric crews are out working too, right? It's not the way it works. So sometimes it's just pointing out. So you treat your hourly employees differently than you do your salaried employees, right? There's different laws, there's different rules, they have different ways they have to do things, they have different ways they have to keep track of their time. So I think there's been a lot of differences out there between different kinds of jobs. This is just a new difference.
Yeah.
And so explain it to people. This is just one new difference, right? There's already 12 differences about what we do, and I think that helps people. But those other 11 differences, had always been there, so nobody thought about them, right? So this is a new difference. At some point in time, I think this will be the new normal, and then this will
It'll be a
be
new
just like a
difference.
difference, the other one. So anyway, sorry.
Thank you for breaking the rules. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. We're super, super, super grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda and our panelists. I mean, what a great morning. What a great kickoff to today. So thank you. I know Amanda has a flight to catch, so we want to give them the opportunity to go ahead and get on her flight. Safe travels. As a reminder, first of all, I'm Pam Simmons. I'm a JWLF board member, and I'm Deputy General Counsel at Mode Transportation. As a reminder, after the conference, please join us for our Cinco de Mayo networking celebration, which will be in the room right next door where we're about to break for lunch. Our lunch break will be 1 hour, and during lunch, you're going to hear from our charity partner, See the Girl. Our lunch break will be in the room next door, like I said, and during lunch, though, you'll have the opportunity to bid on the silent auction items, which you've probably passed several times today in the hallway. Some of you have already started bidding. Thank you. If you look at the faces that are on your tables, that's who half of the proceeds for our silent auction will go to. These young ladies who benefit from See the Girl. So bid high and bid often. And I'll warn you, some of you have already been outbid. So you don't want somebody else walking out with that beautiful Kate Spade purse that's over there in the background, so bid higher. When we return from lunch, we will hear from former tech executive, serial entrepreneur, and award-winning TV, radio, and podcast host, Dana Barrett. Dana will share with us, what's your superpower? Better leadership starts with how we see ourselves. We will see you back here at 1 p.m.